What was the reaction of the two men on the road to Emmaus when they recognized Jesus? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Luke on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Luke 24. We're going to be reading from verses 28 to 35. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Luke 24, beginning at verse 28. Then they drew near to the village where they were going, and he indicated that he would have gone farther. But they constrained him, saying, "Abide with us, for it is towards evening, and the day is far spent." And he went in to stay with them. Now it came to pass, as he sat at the table with them, that he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they knew him, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to one another, "Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us on the road, and while he opened the scriptures to us?" So they rose up that very hour and returned to Jerusalem, and found the 11 and those who were with them gathered together, saying, "The Lord is risen indeed, and has appeared to Simon." And they told about the things that had happened on the road, and how he was known to them in the breaking of bread. The detailed account, which began in our last lesson at verse 13 of the chapter, is only given to us by Luke. Mark mentions it only in passing, but with no detail. We have two men walking from Jerusalem to a village of Emmaus, which is about 11 kilometers or 7 miles away. One of the men is named Cleopas, but we don't know the identity of the other, except to say that he wasn't an apostle because of what we just read in verse 33. While they were walking, they were discussing the events of the last 3 days, and even the events of that morning, for they did have knowledge that the women claimed they saw the empty tomb, and that an angel had told them that Jesus was alive. They did have knowledge that certain of them, Luke would mention Peter, had verified that the tomb was empty, just as the women had said. But at that point, none of the disciples had seen Jesus. As they were discussing these things, Jesus appeared to them, though they didn't recognize him, for their eyes were restrained, meaning likely that Jesus didn't allow them to recognize him. After being told what they were discussing, Jesus said to them that they were foolish and slow of heart, because had they not been, they wouldn't have been surprised by the recent events. Why? Because the prophets had spoken about how the Christ would suffer and be resurrected. The book of Genesis, right there in chapter 3, verse 15, said that the serpent would bruise the heel of the seed of woman, a vague reference to the death of the Messiah. Isaiah foretold of the death and resurrection of the Messiah in Isaiah 53. The Psalms spoke of the death and resurrection of the Messiah in places like Psalms 2 and Psalms 22. Thus, had they known these scriptures, the two men shouldn't have been surprised. So instead of revealing himself right then and there, Jesus wanted to build up their faith, so that when he did reveal himself to them, their faith would have been having more of a foundation than just testimony that they saw him, for mere testimony of the women had not been believed. So Jesus went to the scriptures, to Moses, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, and to the prophets to show them all the things that were spoken concerning him. He might have gone to the very passages that I mentioned earlier, but perhaps he also discussed the sacrificial system and how that related to his death and resurrection. We're not entirely sure, but we know that Jesus went to the scripture and that later these men knew it was Jesus because of how he taught from scripture. These two men were disciples of Jesus, though not 2 of the 12 disciples of Jesus. They had heard him speak before. They knew how he had a complete knowledge of what the scriptures said. So when they finally recognized Jesus, they knew that they weren't mistaken, that their eyes hadn't fooled them. All of this teaching occurred on the road to Emmaus, but as they drew near the city, Jesus said that his intention wasn't to go to this town for the evening, for by now it was late in the day, but the two men pleaded with him, and he went in with them. At mealtime, they all sat at the table, and Jesus took bread, prayed for it, and gave it to them. When Jesus had done this, the men's eyes were opened. They recognized Jesus, but Jesus vanished from their presence. After he left, the two men were said to each other that wasn't their heart burning while he talked with them on the road and opened the scriptures to them. Basically, they were saying that they should have known it was Jesus much earlier because of how he spoke to them. Nobody else could explain the scriptures like Jesus did, not even the scribes or lawyers. They didn't allow their amazement or the lateness of the day prevent them from revealing what they had seen to the 11, though. They thus returned to Jerusalem, found the 11, who by then were together, with the knowledge that Jesus had appeared to Simon, who was Peter. None of the Gospels record this appearance. However, Paul does in 1 Corinthians 15, though he merely does in passing. The two men, however, add more evidence to the books by saying what they had seen and how he was known to them in the breaking of bread. Jesus' appearance after his resurrection are amazing. They have a purpose, to produce faith in his followers. But Jesus' appearance also serves another purpose, to prepare his disciples for their upcoming mission of going to spread the gospel to the whole world. We'll see this point being made in our upcoming lessons. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Luke 24, verses 36 to 43, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.